Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. If you're sitting home and watching the football, or if you're... Pardon?
It's 1-1.
The score, as Michael has it, is 1-1. Was it Argentina against?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Interesting. Okay. Hi, David. Okay. Our vice president has joined us as well. Remotely, but he's here. Yeah. Hi, Yoni. Pardon?
Outside in the car park.
Who was outside in the car park?
David.
Who was? Oh, was in the car park before. Okay, big deal. Right. Hi, Ralph. Okay, we're ready to go. Let's start. I had an interesting thought this week that I wanted to share with you. There's a lot of different things in the Parasha that I wanted to go through. We read about Bilam. Bilam, the villain, the one who tries to curse the Jewish people. And one of the things that struck me, and we'll connect this a bit later to Poland, I guess. You have Balak, who sends the following message to Bilam. Balak says, this is in Parasha Pasuk Hey, if you're in the Art Scrolls, you're on page 856. He sent messengers to Bilam Be'ar, Pesara, to this place called Pesar, or to whatever, what a translation is. There's more than one translation in Rashi. That's where he sent it to say, there's a nation that, behold, there's a nation came out of Egypt. It covered up all the land, and is now opposite me. Now, go and curse for me, this nation. Because it's bigger than me. Because I might this way be able to kill some of them, and get rid of them from my land. Because I know the ones that you bless will be blessed, and the ones whom you curse will be cursed. And the Ziknei Moab and Ziknei Midian go to Bilam, and they tell Bilam exactly what Balak said. And Bilam says to them, well, spend the night. I'm going to try to see if I'm going to get some communication from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if God speaks to me and tells me what to do, I will then come back to you and tell you what the story is. So God comes to Bilam, and God says to Bilam, who are these people that have come to you? And Bilam, instead of realizing that God was just trying to engage him in conversation, goes, ooh, God doesn't know who these people are. So he decides to give God a rundown. And he says, this is in verse 10. Bilam says to God, Balak ben Zippor, the king of Moab, sent these messengers to me. And he sent the following message. Behold, there's a nation that's come out of Egypt. And it has covered the eye of the land, meaning it covers the entire land. So go and curse them for me. And maybe this way I'll be able to fight against them, and I'll be able to expel them from my land. So says Balak. David Mintz just said, he says, this week is an estate agent's favorite Sedra. It's the first documented property valuation. So Bilam says, how goodly are thy tents, O Israel? So he says, at least £300,000, but my agent told me I could get more. That's very good. I like that, David. 2 thumbs up. So you have the language over here. So Bilam is giving Hashem, so to speak, a rundown about what's happening, because God's not really in the picture. So Bilam decides, God, I'm going to get you in the picture. Yeah, strange enough. And so he tells him what happens. But let's go back. Let's look at the words. What word did Balak use, and what word does Bilam use? And Rashi points to this difference. So the word that Balak uses in verse 6, orally. Orally is translated. Look at the English. Actually, it'd be interesting to see what the translation of that is. How does he translate it in the English? Please go and now. Hi, honey. Curse. Okay. But the word is ora. And if you look at verse 10, verse 11 actually, he says, behold, the nation that's come out of Mitzrayim, and it's covered the entire land. The word is not ora, the word that you is kava. What does kava mean, or how does he translate it in the English? He also says curse. So Rashi actually points out and says there are two words that are being used here, but the Bilam has changed from the word that was used by Balak in his request to a different request. Why did he change? Says Rashi, Kava, the word that Bilam uses, is actually a stronger language, or a stronger word even than the word Ara. And so therefore, Balak says, I'm going to just try to get them away from me. And Bilam takes it to the next level. Bilam takes it, he supersizes that curse of Balak. To show you that Bilam actually hated the Jews even more than Balak did. So says Rashi. End of comment. So there's a very important point to be made over here. And I think it's a point, as I said when I spoke about it, I said I'm making this point specifically about Poland, because I don't know how many of you have heard, I mean, this is, I think, already almost a year old, but there is a rule that's been made in Poland, and they're very, very particular about this rule, because I've spoken to people that take H trips to Poland, or that took King David to Poland, and they all said the same thing. You have to be careful now. When you come to Auschwitz and you lead a tour, what are you not allowed to say? Polish Holocaust. You can say lots of things about the Holocaust, but you cannot say that the Poles were involved. The Poles had nothing to do with this. They were innocent. They were schlepped into this as people got schlepped into a war. It happened in their country, but had nothing really to do with them, and therefore it has become a criminal offense. A criminal offense. I don't know what it's punishable with, but some people say it's even punishable with jail. I'm not sure. You could Google it if you wanted to. But it's a criminal offense in Poland to refer to the Holocaust or to refer to the Poles as having been involved or collaborated on the Holocaust. And you read here this story with Bilam, and I think there's an important point to be learned and to be gleaned from this. And that's the following. Many times, the megalomaniacs that go out there and want to destroy the Jews are only going to be successful, or almost always they will only be successful because the native population is privy and is, pardon, what did you say?
Anti-Semitic.
Is anti-Semitic and helps along. They cannot do that on their own. The Germans could have not just marched into Poland and killed out all the Jews without the help of the Poles. And I think it's important to keep in mind, and we'll just discuss this a little bit. If Poland, for hundreds of years, had been known as a Jew-loving country, a country where Jews always lived in peace, where their rights were protected in law, where they were never discriminated against, where there never ever had been a pogrom, or never an uprising, or never a Jew killed for no reason, and then suddenly a Holocaust happens there, you could scratch your head and you could say, gee, I wonder how can that happen in Poland? But everybody knows, anybody who has ever read anything about history, you just got to go back to 1648, 1649. Khmelnytsky. There was a Cossack uprising, and they killed at the time, and it doesn't sound as much, especially today, because we have the Holocaust, and everything pales in numbers against the Holocaust. But at the time, they killed 300,000 Jews in Poland. With that uprising, the Cossack uprising killed 300 or 350,000 Jews in Poland.
The population of the world has increased from
Correct.
to 6,000.
That's right. So if you look at it and you say 300,000, it might not be 6 million, but I think if you look at the numbers and the proportions, it's not that far out. Because I don't think at the time Poland had 3 million Jews as it did at the time of the Holocaust. Now the Holocaust, Poland had 3 million Jews, and 300,000 is only, in inverted commas, 10%. At the time, then, it might have had only 500,000 Jews, in which instance you're looking at 2/3 of the Jewish population, or maybe more than that, wiped out in a very brutal uprising. And to add to that, by the way, in 1648 and 1649, they didn't have the modern machinery to be able to kill people. Which means, in order to kill people in Poland, what did they need to do? Use their bare hands. Yeah? So using their bare hands, they killed 350,000 Jews. And then you go through the 17 and the 1800s and you read about how the Hasidim and how people constantly were thrown into prison without any charge and how people were terribly treated, etc., etc. There's a history of hundreds of years of hatred to Jews. And then comes 1938, 1939, all the way through till 1945. And suddenly the Poles turn around and say, we never had anything against Jews. Really? Have you ever read the history books? Have you ever had a look in the mirror? You really believe that to be true? You really believe you are innocent? Can you believe honestly that you're innocent? Does that mean every Pole was involved? Absolutely not. I'm not going to say, yes, we have righteous people. And there are people that stood on the fence, that just sat on the wall, sat on the fence, whatever you want to call it. They just stood to the side. They didn't get involved. But to say that people were not involved, or to say that it had nothing to do with the population, with the general population, is just a lie, and it's misunderstanding history. And that's the thing. I heard Rabbi Wein say, he says, anybody who studies history and then looks at what happens in Europe in the years of the Second World War, on the one hand, the scale should still scare us. The scale of what happened. But the fact that there was mass killing of Jews should not be any surprise. Europe had a long and very bloody history of anti-Semitism. Whether it was France, whether it was Germany, whether it was Austria, whether it was Poland, whether it was Russia, whether it was Latvia or Lithuania, all these countries, they all have stories of kicking out Jews, of prosecuting Jews, of pogroms, of blood libels, all these other things, so that there was Jew hatred that had been going through their blood, that had been inculcated in them from childhood. So that now when it comes to the question of why or how could such a thing happen, the answer should be pretty simple. Because the population believed in this.
In 1946 in Poland.
Even then, in 1946, and that would be and then the Germans had left already. So the Jews came back to Poland to try to reclaim what was theirs, and many Poles who had taken over, who had Aryanized Jewish shops, Jewish apartments, Jewish houses, etc., when the Jews showed up, they just killed them in cold blood. You ain't getting your house back. You're not getting your factory or your company back, and they just killed them. You just send them out. You didn't have to kill them. But they had nothing to do with it. So there's a famous book that was written, I don't remember the name of the professor that wrote the book. There's a professor, I think, from Harvard, from Yale, many years ago, 20 years ago. It's already an old book, but it's called Hitler's Willing Executioners. And in this book, he describes not only the fact that Hitler himself obviously had this tremendous hatred for the Jews, but the fact that the population at large also had that hate for the Jews. And that Hitler found willing executioners among the regular folk, amongst the regular people, and amongst the most educated of people. The fact that people were educated was not a barrier to killing, to anti-Semitism, or to anything else. Because people said, well, if we educate all of Europe, then nothing can happen to the Jew. Well, you saw that wasn't true. We educated all of Europe, and what happened? The most educated people of Europe. Most of the commandants in Auschwitz and in many other concentration camps either had a secondary degree or even had a doctorate. These are people that were highly intelligent, highly cultured, etc., and yet, when it came to Jews, everything went out the window.
Even now, don't they reckon 40% of the Germans don't like Jews?
Could be.
A lot of the intelligentsia believed in the false science that Hitler was sort of propagating.
Meaning
that,
the Aryanism?
About the Herrenvolk.
Right.
A lot of them believed in that, misguidedly, but intellectually.
Right.
I mean, there's a whole literature, serious scholarly literature,
yes,
supporting this.
That the intelligentsia believed in the Aryan.
That's right.
In the supremacy of the Aryan race.
Yes.
Okay, and he had done a good job. Look, he did. We have to admit that if you were to mount a campaign of that sort, Hitler did it phenomenally. I don't like to give praise to Hitler. Chas v'sholom, there's a man that doesn't deserve any praise. But if you want to discuss mounting a campaign, the man mounted a brilliant campaign. He was only able to do that because he had the right people on side with him, and he himself was very, very good at it, and they got the German people to buy into it. And he tells a story, and this is like in the beginning of the entire book of this Hitler Willing Executioner, he tells a story of a traveling band of actors that came to a concentration camp to entertain the people that ran the concentration camps. And this traveling group of actors found out that there was actually going to be an aktia. There was going to be a killing of Jews, a mass killing of Jews in the next day or two. And they said, well, we're here anyway, can we join in? And so they joined in for 3 days, and then they moved on to another concentration camp to go ahead and to do another play for other people. And he cites this as one of many examples that he had not only a few crazy people that helped him, but that the regular Joe Blogs in the middle of the street also believed very much in the propaganda of Hitler and in the things that Hitler was trying to espouse. And we see it over here. So the Torah already tells us that Balak wants to get rid of the Jewish people, and he enlists Bilam, and the Torah tells us Bilam hated the Jews even more than Balak did. I don't know if people hated the Jews so much more than Hitler did. I don't know if it was possible. But he found a very, very willing nation that are willing to go along with it. That's the first idea that I wanted to say.
Just another thing that, again, intelligentsia thought was, I think, that Hitler was a bastion against communism.
Right.
So they thought
it was worthwhile. Whatever he needs to do, because he's with the negative comes some positive as well, so to speak. Okay, so that's the first idea. Now, let's go back to this sentence, the sentence that we had before that we mentioned. God comes to Bilam and he says to Bilam, who are these people with you? And Bilam answers back, Balak ben Tzipor melech Moav shalach alai. Balak ben Tzipor, the king of Moav, sent them to me. What's he trying to say to God by giving him this introduction? So Rashi says, Af al pi she'eni choshuv be'einecha choshuv ani b'einei hamelachim. Bilam says, I realize, God, that to you I'm a little bit of a nobody. But to those people, I'm really important. Do you know the king of Moab sent me a message? Do you know how important I am? And that was the message he was telling God. God, you should know. You might not treat me with that much respect. I don't get that much respect here, but I get respect somewhere else. I get respect from other people. But if you think about it, it's folly. It's a silly thing to say. It's a silly thing to pass on. Right? Do you know, sometimes we like to get respect from certain people, but the truth is it such a great cover that these people respect you? Right? Not necessarily is it such a great cover that these people respect you. I remember there are many times where you have people that are all excited that somebody thinks they're very intelligent. And it's all question of levels, right? So for example, I like to give this as an example. I often find this. If I were to tell you somebody's very wealthy, and if Bill Gates were to tell you somebody's very wealthy, my idea of very wealthy or not very wealthy can't compare to the ideas that Bill Gates has of very wealthy. If Bill Gates says somebody's very wealthy, the guy must really be very wealthy, right? If I say the guy's very wealthy, if he's got a few bob in the bank, he's already doing a lot better than I am. If he's got 6 figures, he's wealthy. If he's got 7, he's very wealthy. Bill Gates will say 7 fingers in the bank. Who's got 7 fingers in the bank? Before you hit 10 figures, you don't get anywhere near wealthy. And if you hit 11, that's when you start getting very wealthy. I told you, double-digit billions, who cares? Right? So it's all about levels. If somebody who's not that intelligent or who's not so good at something says this guy is good at something, whatever it might be, you're not much of an opinion on the matter. You're not much of an expert on the matter. So because you're not much of an expert on the matter, if you say about somebody else, oh, the fellow is so learned, right? If somebody in shul says somebody is learned, if I say somebody is learned, or if somebody that's much more learned than I am says somebody is learned, you'll find that there be very different varying levels of who's learned. Says, but whose opinion matters? It's often important to note whose opinion matters. If you have people that are not very honorable, and those are the people that look up to you, what does that really mean? What does that say about you? Not very much. What did Groucho Marx say? Any club that wants to have me as a member is a club I don't want to be a member of. Yeah? If you can stoop low enough to accept a guy like me into your club, you obviously have no morals. I don't want to be part of this. So God comes to Bilam and he says to Bilam, who are these people? And Bilam says, I may not be important in your eyes, but you see those low lives over there? They really think I'm important. And we read it and we smile and we laugh and we say, really? That's who you're proud of? Those are the people you want to point to and go, do you know who thinks I'm important? You know, I was walking down the street and there were two homeless guys and they gave me 2 thumbs up, both of them. I must be really important when I walk down Market Street. And you'd be like, that's the people that you need to get praise from? You got nobody better to talk about? So you say, all right, well, Balak was a king. But the truth is, we only should really be worried about being important in one entity. If you're important to God, that's important. If you're important to a whole bunch of people, whoever they may be, even if they're the queen or the king, but if God doesn't think much of you, then in reality, you're not very important. Because the people who really count, that's how you can count importance. That's how you can assess whether a person is important or not. You take somebody who really counts and they think you're important, well, then you're the important. But if you say to God, I know you don't think I'm important, but there's a guy down there that thinks I am important. And God's like, all right. I guess you think that guy's important enough for you to actually take his opinion seriously. You need to know whom to take seriously. You need to know whose opinion of you is important and whose opinion of you is actually not that important. We try to impress certain people with certain things that we do, when in reality, they're not so important. They're not really, they shouldn't be important enough in our lives for us to compromise on our values. We should have stronger values than that. Okay? That's point number 2. And similarly, by the way, we see further down in the verse, I'm going to give you this similar idea. You see, it says, Vayom Elokim el Bilam, God says to Bilam, Lo seilech imam, do not go with them. Lo sa'ar es ha'am ki varuchu. Do not curse the people because they are blessed. So, Rashi says, originally he says, he said, don't go with them. He says, okay, so if I don't go with them, how about I curse them from here? He says, no, don't curse them. He says, so how about I bless them? God says, no, don't even bless them. And then he gives an important mashal. He says, mashal amrim letzira, lo mituvshech v'lo miukzech. They say a mashal letzira is a hornet. We don't want your honey, we don't want your sting. We don't want your positive, you don't want your negative. And again, this is the same idea. There are certain people you want to have nothing to do with. Not in the positive, not in the negative. The truth is, I just want to keep out. That's all I want to do. I don't want anybody to, especially with certain people. And that's what he's saying to them. Lo seilech imam, don't go with them. Why can't I go with them? He says, because God says, I don't want you having anything to do with these people. These aren't important people. These are people that are misleading you. These are people that are taking you on a ride in a direction that you shouldn't really be going. And therefore, God says, do not. And therefore, God says, do not. Okay? Right? Okay, that doesn't look friendly. Do not go with them. Because the reality is that these people are not people that you want to have anything to do with. Says, I'll do something for them here. No. Don't curse the Jews, don't bless the Jews, just don't get involved. These people, forget that they ever came, forget that they ever gave you any covet, just keep away. And in life, there are people where it's just best to keep away. You know that if some certain people get in touch with you and they want to have something to do with you, and they want to, even if they come and they want to give you covet, sometimes you say the covet is just not worth it. I know these people are just trouble. They're not worth the hassle. They're not worth the fallout of whatever else it is that's going to come afterwards. And therefore you say, it's not important. I just keep away. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning of the story. I think there's an important point to be made here. I said this at Chasana this week also, that Balak ben Tzipor sees what the Jews did to the Amori, and therefore they were very afraid about what was going to happen to them. Because they were so afraid what was going to happen to them, they engage Bilam to curse the Jewish people, and we see the entire story. Had the Jewish people made any move whatsoever towards Balak, towards Moab, towards conquering them, towards fighting against them, is there any discussion of this whatsoever? No. So where did this come from? And therefore, okay, that's exactly what happened. They saw what happened to other people, and they got frightened. And this fright, if you read afterwards, it says that Rashi, the way Rashi explains it, is that people were afraid. They felt they didn't have any koyach. By Yokot's Moav, Rashi says, Kotsu b'chayim. They were almost disgusted with their own lives. They're just going to kill us. Kill me now. I don't even want to wait. Just come, someone take a sword, kill me. This is going to end up so badly anyway. I might as well die before this whole thing happens. You know what you can describe the entire story as? Mass hysteria. Sometimes people whip up a frenzy. They create this hysterics when in reality, what's happening? Nothing. There's nothing happening. Not only that, the Jewish people, do you know how the Jewish people know what happened in Parasha's Balak? How do they know about this entire story? Because Chumash tells them. The Jewish people, they're walking along very quite happily. They don't even know what's going on in the background. In the background, there are these kings that are plotting to kill them, and they're plotting to curse them, and plotting to do all sorts of things to them. And the Jews are just walking around happily, like nothing happened. And then in the end, they hear, by the way, Moshe calls them in and says, let me just tell you a story that happened. When did this happen? Last week? Really? Why didn't I hear about it? Oh, God just made sure that everything took care of it. Yeah? It was almost like with a Iron Dome or with the Patriot missiles shooting down the Scud missiles. God was just, as they were coming, boom, we were just picking them off left, right, and center. So Balak suddenly looks around at Moab, and the entire Moab goes, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? The Jewish people are going to attack us. They're coming. They're going to kill us. Who knows what's going to happen? The Jewish people are walking around. They're saying, well, I don't know. We're just trying to go around. And it reminds you sometimes of situations that you get yourself into where you feel, I don't know how this whole thing started. I don't even know how it happened that people got all nervous about this. Where did this come from? I can't remember when it was. Did anybody remember this? That I think maybe a couple of years ago there was this hysteria about petrol running out in this country. And everybody went to the petrol stations and everybody filled up the car because they thought petrol. Do you remember that, Michael? Do you know what I'm talking about? You drive an electric car. You're like, no, I don't do that kind of.
There was some issue with the refineries.
There was some kind of issue. And everybody said, there's not going to be any petrol. There's not going to be any petrol. And therefore, everybody went to fill up. You waited for half an hour in line. Petrol stations ran out of petrol. And guess what? There was plenty of petrol. The week after, you just had to wait for another car to show up. Another petrol tanker to show up. There's plenty of petrol. We never suffered. We never ran out of petrol. We never even had petrol. You know why we had a petrol shortage? It was a petrol shortage that was created by the hysteria.
It's all in people's cars, not in the pumps, yeah.
Pardon?
It's all in people's cars, not in the pumps. Yeah.
Exactly. So I said there was going to be a petrol shortage, and there was a petrol shortage. Exactly. Do you know why? We created it. It's almost stupid to discuss. People got hysterical, so they went out and they bought petrol, and then there was no petrol because everybody bought petrol. And they say, see, there's no petrol. Like, no, It's your fault. If you hadn't filled up every single car that you own, there'd be petrol for other people to have, and you wouldn't have 3 cars that you don't drive full of petrol. Well, who knows when the next time is we're going to get petrol? Guess what? Tomorrow. People got hysterical. Got very, very nervous about what's going to happen and what's going to be. I know also when there's for example, in America, sometimes they have these snowstorm warnings. This is going to be a snowstorm and people are going to be snowed in for days. What happens when you get that kind of warning? Pardon? Everybody goes out and buys food and buys water and buys all sorts of, you buy candles. The shops have no candles left just in case the snow brings down one of the electrical lines and then our block won't have anything, we won't be able to see. In the meantime, afterwards, the snow, I remember, what was it? I was flying to America for my brother's bris last year in March, and they said there was going to be a snowstorm like you've not seen it before, and they shut down entire airports. They canceled thousands of flights for 2 inches of snow. They got like 2 inches. They got like almost no snow. And I remember they called me up. They said we reroute. I bought a ticket, and it was silly because that hysteria happened. I found a ticket. The ticket was £320. It was a great ticket. And I was about to buy it, and for some reason my credit card wasn't working. So I said, okay, I'll buy it in 2 hours, 3 hours time. I came back 2-3 hours time. For some reason, in the meantime, in those 3 hours where I wasn't in my office, I didn't buy the ticket, they had announced a snowstorm. Because they announced a snowstorm that's going to crush the eastern coast of America, what happened? Everybody rushed to buy tickets. My ticket went from £320 to £520 in 3 hours. And none of the routes I wanted were available anymore. And so in the end, I had to fly via Philadelphia. And I called my mother and said, I have a plane, I'm going by Philadelphia. Why did you buy a ticket via Philadelphia? So yelling at me on the phone, like, what happened? What's the problem? Why did you buy a ticket via Philadelphia? Don't you know Philadelphia shut? And I went online and I looked at Philadelphia airport. Cancel. Hundreds of flights canceled. Because I was going to fly from Manchester to Philadelphia and then Philadelphia to New York. I said, all right, worst comes to worst, I take a train from Philadelphia to New York. I'm like, no, there's no trains, there's no cars, there's no planes, there's nothing. In the end, they rerouted me. I flew to Heathrow. And from Heathrow, I flew with American Airlines. I flew to Kennedy, which was quite convenient. And then I took a train from Kennedy. Somebody gave me a lift into the city, and that's how I got there. I got there about 12:30 at night, and the bus was next day at 7 a.m. Be that as it may. But there was this mass hysteria. They canceled thousands of flights. They disrupted tens of thousands of passengers' lives. For what?
For sprinkling of snow.
For a sprinkling of snow. But the snow is coming! It might, but it didn't. And people go, like I said, people go and they buy gallons and gallons. People are coming out, they're schlepping water like no tomorrow. What happens? The pipes are going to freeze and there's not going to be anything to drink. We're going to starve. They fill up their freezer with 3 weeks worth of food. We might be stuck in this house for 2 days. 2 days, come on. I mean, like, you know, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. But people get so flustered. They get so nervous. They get so hysterical about things that they go all out to buy all these things because they think if I don't, and what happens is people actually egg each other on. So one neighbor calls the other, have you been to Tesco already? No. Do you know Tesco's run out of water? Maybe the Asda and Radcliffe has some. Asda and Radcliffe? Why would I go all the way to Radcliffe to go shopping? Don't you realize if you don't get water now, you might end up without any water for 3 days? Buy extra water to flush your toilet. You know, big gallons. You know, you have a barrel outside in your garden to make sure that you'll have enough to flush the toilet because the toilet won't flush. Really? Is it that bad? It's worse than it's ever been. Yeah? With global warming, of course. Right? And so you go to Asda in Radcliffe because you think you need to buy this water. In the meantime, Tesco here in Cheetham Hill and Tesco in Prestwich had plenty of water. And you could have gone, you know, pardon?
They had another delivery.
They had another delivery. It was fine. There was enough water. There was enough food. There was a sprinkling of snow. Nobody got stuck. The only people that didn't get to school are your kids. You could still go to work. Your kids couldn't go to school because the school's closed. And you know, and so therefore now you really had something on your hand. How am I going to take care of my kids that are stuck home? All the schools closed. It's all hysteria. It's all this people getting hysterical sometimes for no reason. And even let's say there's a snowstorm. So how many days do you need water for? You anticipate to be locked in for 3 days. Do you need 3 weeks worth of water? You need 3 weeks worth of supplies if you're locked in for 3 days. You need hundreds of candles, spreading them strategically throughout your entire house.
It's like the winter holiday. People buy food for a fortnight.
Where?
Well, in the winter holiday, around
yes.
Christmas or whatever.
Yeah.
You buy food for a week when the shops are only closed for a day or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
But again, but what's going to happen? Tesco's closed. I mean, what if I need something? And what if I need Brussels sprouts just on that day? So you manage a day without Brussels sprouts. You mean, who needs them? Yeah. I'm going to need turkey. I'm going to need stuffing. I'm going to need, they need all these bits and pieces, and you just go all out. And then you buy 2 weeks worth of beer also, because you have to. Because what will happen if you run out?
In Russia, the beer ran out.
Did they?
Wow.
Yeah.
Couldn't brew enough.
And they ran out of carbon dioxide for...
Yeah, they've been running out. They said there was an issue with carbon dioxide. Yeah, I did hear that in the news. They were having problems with carbon dioxide. Yeah, I heard somebody. There was a lady on the radio who was speaking about they own a pub. They use up 3 or 4 gallons of 3 or 4 barrels of carbon dioxide every single week. Just a crazy amount of carbon dioxide. Just crazy. So it is. It is quite interesting. But again, okay, they ran out. So that's not it being hysterical. They did run out because they didn't expect to have that many people coming in, that much beer to be drunk. It was a shame because the pubs are like, if I had more gallons of beer, I could make more money. Just sold everything that I had. Just didn't buy enough. But again, this being hysterical, it's not useful. It doesn't help anybody. It just gets everybody nervous. And this whole story could have been saved if the people of Moab had sent a friendly message to Klal Yisrael to say, is everything okay? We don't want to fight with you. You don't fight with us. We'll let you travel past us. We'll let you travel around us. Do whatever you want to. We'll stay in our place. You'll stay in your place. And the Jews will be like, fine. We don't want to fight with you. The only reason they fought with Sichon and Og is because Sichon and Og came out and fought against them. It's all right. If you attack me, I'll have to go ahead and I'll have to defend myself. I can't not defend myself. But Moab, they didn't have a gripe with. But Moab themselves felt, oh my goodness, what's going to happen and what are we going to do and what's going to be, and the Jews are going to attack us. We're all going to die. And it's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. How are we ever going to survive this? And they go crazy, hysterical. And this is the result of mass hysteria. It's not the result of anybody's thought-out process. And if you think and you calm down and you take it easy, you'll see things go a lot better. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us live. Thank you for those who joined us on in person. It's even nicer that people join us in person. Please like and share if you did enjoy this and pass it around to others. Thank you.
Sure. Yes.